Hello everyone, welcome to the class of English Literature. I am Dr. Sunita Meena, Assistant Professor, English. Today we are going to discuss 25th chapter of the Poetics by Aristotle. In this chapter, Aristotle tells that how the poet should answer the objections raised by critics. Critics attack the words of poets in various ways, and so it is necessary for a poet to know how to answer the objections coming from critics. A poet may commit two kinds of faults: those which touch the essence of poetry, and those which are accidental. If a poet has chosen to imitate something but has imitated it incorrectly through want of capacity, the error is inherent in the poetry. But if the failure is due to a wrong choice of subject, the error is not essential to the poetry. These are the 2 points of view from which the objection raised by the critics should be considered and answered. If a poet describes the impossible, he is guilty of an error. However, he can justify the error if the end of a poem be thereby attained, the end being that which has already been mentioned. A case in point is the pursuit of Hector by Aeschylus. If the error committed by a poet touches the essentials of the poetic art, it is a serious matter. But if the error touches some accident of the poetic art, the matter is less serious. If a critic alleges that a piece of description in a poem is not true to fact, the poet may perhaps reply, but the objects are as they ought to be, just as Sophocles said that he drew man as they ought to be, and Euripides drew man as they are. In this way, the objection may be met. If, however, the representation be of neither kind, the poet may answer, "This is how men say the thing is." This applies to stories relating to the gods. In examining whether what has been said or done by someone is poetically right or not, we must not look merely to the particular act or speech and ask whether it is poetically good or bad. We must also consider by whom it has been said or done, to whom, when by means, what means, or for what end. Other difficulties may be resolved by due regard to the use of language. When a poet employs a rare word, we should make sure of the sense in which he has used it. For instance, at one place, the use of the word ill favored was designed to convey the idea of an ugly face and not to convey the idea that the body of the person was ill shaped. Again, the phrase mix the drink livelier does not mean mix it stronger, as for hard drinkers, but mix it quicker. Sometimes an expression is metaphorical and the reader or the critic may not realize it. If a word seems to involve some inconsistency of meaning, we should consider how many senses it carries in the particular passage. Furthermore, the impossible may be justified by reference to artistic requirement or to the higher reality or to received opinion. With respect to the requirements of art, a probable impossibility is to be preferred to a thing which is improbable and yet possible. To justify the irrational, a poet may appeal to what is commonly said to be. In this way, the key, in this case, the poet can also say that the irrational does not always violate reason, just as it is probable that a thing may happen contrary to probability. However, the element of the irrational and similarly depravity of character are rightly condemned when there is no inner necessity for introducing them. Such is the irrational element in the introduction of the Aegeus by Euripides and the badness of Menelaus in the play The Orestes. Now, chapter 26. In this chapter, Aristotle discusses the superiority of tragedy over the epic. The question may be raised whether the epic or the tragic mode of imitation is the higher. Tragedy has sometimes been criticized because of the extravagance of the gestures which the characters make on the stage. But this aspect of tragedy relates not to the poetic art but to the theoretical art. Besides, extravagant gestures may also be made sometimes by the person who is reciting an epic. Furthermore, all gestures should not be condemned. Only the extravagant or exaggerated gestures should be censored. Not only that, tragedy like epic poetry can produce its effects even without any gestures being made by the actors on the stage. The power of tragedy can be felt by us even if we merely read through it or listen to somebody reading it out to us. The superiority of tragedy over the epic. Tragedy is superior to the epic. Tragedy has all the epic elements and may even use the epic meter. Besides, tragedy has music and spectacular effects as important accessories. These accessories can produce the most vivid of pleasures. Moreover, tragedy attains its end within narrower limits. The concentrated effect of a tragedy is more pleasurable than the effect of an epic, the action of which is spread over a long time and is thus diluted. If the play Oedipus by Sophocles were cast into a form as long as the epic poem, the Iliad, the effect of the play would greatly be diminished. Then there is another disadvantage from which an epic poem suffers. An epic poem has less unity than a tragedy. Any epic poem can furnish subjects for several tragedies, and this shows that there is less unity in an epic poem. The length of an epic poem definitely involves some loss of unity. At the same time, it cannot be denied that the Iliad and the Odyssey are as perfect as possible in structure. Each is in the highest degree attainable, an imitation of a single action. Further, Aristotle states that tragedy a higher art than the epic. If then tragedy is superior to epic poetry in all these respects and moreover fulfills its specific function better as an art, it evidently follows that tragedy is the higher art. Each art should produce not any chance pleasure, but the pleasure proper to it, and tragedy attains its end more perfectly.